We're very pleased, in particular, to be able to present Ambassador Elizabeth Bagley, who is the Special Representative for Global Partnerships in the U.S. State Department.
It's quite an introduction. I don't think I'm going to touch the personal relationship, personal partnership between the Clintons. Let me just say it's very strong. Thank you all for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here at BSR. Over the last 17 years, you have shown how businesses can make a real difference. One that goes beyond job creation by turning our world's most serious challenges into opportunities to improve the bottom line. Some of you have emphasized the perils of climate change, anticipating how going green would have such immense business potential long before it became popularized. Others have focused on how overexploitation of natural resources compels companies to develop more sustainable, long-term solutions to maintain and grow the bottom line. Still others have underscored how strategies to tap into emerging markets must take the welfare of impacted communities into account to create a more sustainable, secure, and equitable future. Each of these conversations has been important, and each time they've brought us back to the reality that in our changing world, business as usual no longer makes sense. The triple bottom line must become the bottom line. At BSR, you understood this long before the economic crisis, and you led us to these truths more often than others. When business as usual denied those realities, BSR and its member companies challenged the status quo as effectively as anyone over the last several years. With your network of over 250 members around the globe, BSR has been at the forefront of creating a just and sustainable world through pioneering research, game-changing advisory efforts, and a phenomenal ability to convene, as we see very well from this immense group of people here today. Aaron Kramer truly deserves a round of applause for all he's done. Thank you. Now, I have 3 points to address in my brief time with you this afternoon. The first involves the scope of our world's shared challenges. The second entails our shared responsibilities. And the third is about the shared response required from all of us now and in the years to come. I came here today to raise these issues on behalf of the President and the Secretary of State, and to issue this challenge. We must increase the scale of our collaborations to meet the scope of the shared problems our world is facing. We must regroup after the economic crisis. We must reset our priorities, as Aaron has mentioned, and then we must reorganize ourselves into new partnerships to meet the world's challenges. We must realize that globalization has changed the way we do business, and it is up to us to lead the way to a better, more responsible type of globalization moving forward through smarter business and more open government. As we have seen with the recession, which sent 2.6 million more Americans into poverty and 90 million more people around the world into the extreme poverty of less than $1 a day, we have not been living up to the responsible leadership that the world needs. We must come to grips with the realities of this young century. As we pursue recovery and growth, we have an opportunity and a responsibility to reassess our values and realign them to the hard facts that we face due to the worst recession since the Great Depression. The scope of the world's challenges requires us to act now to create a better, smarter, and more equitable approach to globalization. In the 60s, nearly 70% of all money flowing from the United States to the developing world was called official development assistance. Today, over 80% is from private sources. Globalization is making that pie much bigger. The total value of official development assistance has actually grown at an average annual rate of 5.5%, from $7.14 billion in 1980 to $27.6 billion in 2005. But even with this growth, the share of the pie has decreased from 70% to 20% of the total money flowing from the U.S. to the developing world. Most of it is, as you know, private sources, private sector money, and out of that, 26%, so I think it's an incredible figure, is from remittances from the diaspora. As globalization impacts our world in these ways, it acts as a double-edged sword with great rewards and even greater responsibilities. And with the recent economic crisis, we know it can cut both ways. Yet, if we don't work together to solve the food, water, climate, health, and energy crises we are facing, the worst will be yet to come. Just as we have to learn from the mistakes of the economic meltdown, so too should we learn how these crises threaten sustainability and security. Industrialization created opportunities for hundreds of millions of people across the world to have safer, more secure, and more productive lives. But rampant pollution has forced us to reevaluate our consumer habits in order to avoid ecological disaster. Carbon emissions from factories across the Pacific, in Beijing, and from cars right here in San Francisco are melting the ice caps and imperiling the planet. And so we face the hard realization about the risks we haven't taken into account. Because AIDS impacts your employees in Nairobi, your healthcare costs will rise for employees in Florida. But as air travel has allowed us all to come here to San Francisco and then to go on from here to wherever else in the world, making worldwide networks and global business truly possible, it also means that a few cases of the flu become a pandemic that could slow down world trade, or that a few extremists can even bring down the World Trade Center. Yet, we also know that in many ways, the future market for your products is not Iowa, it is China. You will no longer grow your consumer base as much in Indiana as you will in India, where untold numbers suffer in poverty today, but where they will be participating in a robust and vibrant economy if we are successful in working together towards a better world marked by the smarter globalization we all desire. This brings me to my second point. We must realize the need to organize around our shared responsibility in meeting these new challenges. We realize that as our world has grown closer and more interconnected, we also know that it is more dangerous and more fragile. Even as we grow closer together, divisions continue to tear our world apart. In Darfur, Afghanistan, Pakistan, hundreds of communities less well known that are dealing with corrupt governance, food scarcity, or the effects of climate change. And with these rifts, people everywhere are falling through the cracks. We have to work together to fill that space. We can no longer afford to take incremental approaches that do not mobilize business drivers to solve the world's problems. No one government can address our world's challenges alone. No group of world leaders could possibly come together and concoct the right solutions for any of these unprecedented challenges, whether it is climate change, HIV/AIDS, global poverty, food security, or human rights. And since all of these issues are interconnected, so too must our response be integrated and coordinated. The smarter, better, and more responsible answers require new partnerships among government, the private sector, civil society, philanthropies, faith-based communities, diaspora groups, and everyday citizens in order to solve our shared problems. If any of our institutions or sectors try to go alone, we will unnecessarily limit ourselves, and we will fail by design.